Hey everyone, I'm Ryan Maybee. This is Barely Enough. We are back here in the Hey Hey Club, and tonight I'm joined by a very special guest and very, very good friend of mine, Sother Teague.
Hey man, so excited to finally see the Hey Hey Club. I've never been here until today. I was here when it was a construction site,
Right.
And pencil drawings and all of the notions, and now I get to see it all, and it's amazing.
When was that? The last time you were here in Kansas City?
I believe it was 2018. Does
Yeah.
that match your timeline?
I think so. It would have been Pop Fest, and it
Right.
probably would have been like around this time, like late August
Yep.
or up to mid. I can't remember if it was before Labor Day or right after back then. But
Right. I think it was right after.
Yeah.
But around this time of year, and man, this place is really gorgeous.
I remember we walked through this whole building, and it was just a shell, a massive open blank canvas.
The thing that I remember the most that you said that you were excited about was less about the different layers of the bars, the outdoor. You kept reminding me, and there's going to be a slide from one floor to the other, like you can slide. And I was like a slide?
Like a real slide, like an actual 40-foot metal tornado slide. The beauty of it, I mean, the slide is brilliant.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the slide and how that happened. But the real brilliance of the slide is that it deposits you right in the gift shop.
That is brilliant. Now at Amor y Amargo, we have a full-on gift shop out front of the bar that you have to go through to get both in and out. So pay on your way out in the gift shop.
You have to exit through the gift shop. So the slide was really interesting. It was actually the brainchild of our master distiller, Nathan Perry. It was his idea. And during the ideation of this whole concept, we started J. Rieger Company as a brand first, as a distributed brand first, instead of a place. I think there's this modern trend in little craft distilleries to kind of start off with a tasting room, a bar or two, or that kind of thing, and you're sort of making things in the background, but it's sort of a bar first. We kind of went the opposite direction. And once we did get to the point where we had this really amazing, huge building where we could, build this wonderful, visitor center showroom, we said, no idea is too crazy. Anything goes. So we all kind of sat around. When I say we all, I think it was me, Andy Rieger, his wife Lucy, and Nathan Perry. And we all just said, let's throw the wildest, craziest ideas at the wall and see what happens. And if there was one of those wild, crazy ideas that I, at the time, would have thought there's no chance it happens, or it probably doesn't get done, it was the slide.
I mean, did it evolve? Did it start as a bat pole?
The original idea was a fire pole.
Right.
And that obviously was a little dangerous. But it sort of evolved into this slide concept, and I still thought it wasn't going to happen because it was, ridiculously expensive. And then I remember there were insurance concerns and all that.
I was about to say, was there legal concerns?
Oh, totally legal concerns.
I would like to see your interpretation of the face that your lawyers made when you said, "No, I'm serious."
Well, I gotta give props to Andy Rieger on that because he's the one that sort of made that happen. I remember the conversation. They were really not comfortable with it of having drunk people from the second floor bar
assume they're drunk,
going
we can
right,
assume they're drinking.
Right. And he actually came back with this brilliant logic. It was like, so you're telling me that you think it's safer for them to walk down 2 flights of stairs instead of a controlled tube that gently deposits them on the right? And well, you got a point. That's how the slide happens. And before you leave here, we need to get a picture of you going down the slide.
I'm going down it with my camera in hand. I want to get the GoPro version.
We got to get a picture of you doing that, put it on the wall down here somewhere.
I love it.
Yeah.
Because this place is beautiful. It is kind of the last vestiges of Negroni week. So you made us a Negroni.
Yeah.
And you used your gin.
I did.
And I'm a big fan of yours. And this is just standard Negroni from there. It's Campari and what vermouth did you use? I see it over there.
I used Coqui Vermouth de Torino, which is my favorite. I love it.
Cool. And do you go 1 to 1 to 1?
I do.
Augment with any bitters at all?
No.
And then orange twist.
Yes.
Gorgeous. Standard. The standard bearer. Now let's talk about why use your gin.
So the reason for
other than it's your bar, why not?
Right. Other than we're in.
Do you carry other gins?
Actually, yeah, we do. I mean, we're fortunate enough here to have a full bar.
Yeah.
And so you'll see we have a full back bar. I mean, we've even got one of our all-time favorites, Tanqueray Number 10, which holds a special place in our heart with Tom Nickel. We have Citadel Barrel Aged Gin. Yeah, we do have a handful of others. And the thing is, our gin is a traditional London dry. You know, it's a London dry style of gin, which is why it works so well in a Negroni. You know, these classic drinks that were made over 100 years ago, the majority of them were made with a traditional London dry style of gin, or maybe an Old Tom. But when you look at the gin category today and see how it's evolved and expanded to include all these really unique and different, you know, botanicals and the new Western style of gins, some of them are really beautiful and great. They don't always work in those classic cocktails.
No, I agree. Like I think the one that jumps to my mind, and I'm not bashing on anyone here, I like this gin, but the one that jumps to my mind that people adore but simply doesn't work in a Negroni is Hendrick's.
Right.
Right. Too much rose petal, too much cucumber. You're bringing wrong items to this particular party. So yeah, I'm a classicist when it comes to Negroni. I'm all about that London dry style. I change the ratio. That's why I asked your ratio. I do 1.5, 3/4 gin heavy, because I believe in my heart of hearts that the original Negroni was likely made with gin that was higher in proof. So it was
a good point.
Even at 1:1:1, it was a higher gin quotient. But then I feel like because I've backed down on the bittering agent, I add Angostura. So I do 1.5, 3/4, 2- Ango.
That's interesting.
Built in glass, not stirred.
Yeah.
Add ice and orange twist.
All right, so
But that's just my
no.
nerdy.
This, I love this because we're going to go down a rabbit hole here and geek out on the. Let's just like focus on the Negroni because it's one of my all-time favorite cocktails. It also might be one of the most polarizing cocktails of all time.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, people love it, and you know, it's got this history and all this stuff, and now it's becoming heavily branded with Negroni Week, which we just finished.
I mean, I was about to say, even the most known and probably most popular cocktail in the world, the Martini, doesn't have its own week.
No.
Right? The Negroni does.
Right, globally.
Yeah.
Right? It's a big deal. And yet a lot of people hate it. Right? Like, cannot stand, like, why do you drink this, you know? So I have a lot of thoughts on that. And a while back, I used to do some freelance writing for different publications, some local, some stuff was published nationally. And I wrote an article that I thought was really funny and kind of ironic that didn't get published anywhere. But it was basically, I think I titled it, 3 Steps to Making a Truly Terrible Negroni.
Okay.
Like, you know, if you want a terrible Negroni, it's actually really simple to do, and you see it happen, too often. I think step 1 was don't use a London dry gin, or use a shitty gin. If you want to make a shitty Negroni, use a shitty gin.
Sure.
Right? Basically saying, like, you got to use a good gin, and you got to use the right style of gin. The second one was use a shitty vermouth, which there's a lot of that out there. And I know you have thoughts and opinions on this.
On everything?
I know you do.
I might be known for thoughts and opinions.
But, if you go to a bar, you have no idea, what this bar is. It's just kind of your kind of run-of-the-mill neighborhood bar. And maybe that bottle of sweet vermouth, that cheap bottle of sweet vermouth has been sitting on the back bar for a year. It's kind of dusty and it's been open and it hasn't been refrigerated.
Yeah.
I know you got feelings on this.
I do, a little bit.
So what are your thoughts on that and how that affects the Negroni?
Okay, you're asking, in my opinion, you're asking me 2 different questions.
Yeah.
Question 1 is the less obvious one, I think. I'm going to start with that one because the other one is the one that'll get people all excited. If I walk into a bar that I don't have any great expectation of or any knowledge of, and I can see, as you said, that bottle looks dusty, and I can look down the bar rail and see that maybe no one's drinking a Negroni or a Manhattan or something that might use that vermouth, then this isn't the place to have that drink.
Right.
Like, I'm going to eliminate it already. I'm going to look around and see if I see any jiggers or any tools. If I don't see those, I'm probably having a beer.
Right.
If the floor is sticky, that beer's going to be in a bottle, not on tap. Right? Because if the floor is sticky, then they're not cleaning their beer lines.
You're not getting anything out of a gun.
I want to see it get opened in front of me. So there's that aspect, like read the room. Don't just demand the drink you want so that you can then be happy that you got upset because it was a shitty drink you didn't like. Ooh, can I swear on this?
Yeah, I think I already did. Yep. We're live.
We'll beep it out. It's live stuff. So it's out there then. Is there a question coming in? Well, then I want to quickly touch on the refrigerated part. I know as bartender nerds, and that's probably who's watching and maybe who's already asking a question, that we're like drilled over and over, refrigerate your vermouth, refrigerate your vermouth. I just like to remind people gently that vermouth has been around and popular for longer than refrigeration has existed. So there's not of course the tool exists and we should use it, but if you don't have room in your fridge, it's not going to die overnight. And the second part of that is buy smaller bottles, drink the vermouth you have opened, like move through it at a pace that's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, I don't refrigerate my butter either. It's, you know, probably not the most safe, but that's how it was always done.
Yeah, they don't put their eggs in the refrigerator in Europe.
I don't either. You know, Eric Repair, very famous chef, owner of Le Bernardin in New York City, is famous for, you know, being one of the world's best seafood restaurants. And when New York State started doing letter grades, he got a C, because every station in the kitchen has soft butter for finishing sauces. And when he got the C, he just said, I'll take the C.
Wow.
Because I'm not going to change the way I cook French food. And so he was like,
Right.
world's best seafood restaurant, we got a C. No big
That's
deal.
amazing.
So, anyway, so I don't argue against putting your vermouth in the fridge. I simply don't argue for it.
Sure. Yeah. You know, I think for me, it all kind of comes down to that with the branding of the Negroni and with the exposure that the Negroni has received in the last several years, you know, with Negroni Week and everything. You have a lot of, you know, new drinkers coming on the scene that are trying it for the first time, and if they don't know to look for those things behind a bar, they might be getting a really bad Negroni. I've seen this happen where I've had somebody say this to me before, like, I hate the Negroni, and it was actually a really good friend of mine. I said, look, let me make you one, and let me see if you still hate it. And it was a very different experience from that first one that he had.
I totally understand the notion that if you fed me well done steaks all my life, then I'd probably be like, not really that into steak.
Yeah, right.
But if let's call it a ribeye, so we call the cut as well, because there are pieces of meat that need to be cooked all the way. But like a ribeye is delicious and perfect when it's just slightly past medium rare, 2 clicks below medium. That's where you want it, so that the fat has rendered enough, but the meat is still pink and juicy. So, but if I'd been fed a well done ribeye all my life, I'd be like, yeah, I don't like ribeyes.
Right.
So I understand that there are people who are going to come across and say, like, I don't like a daiquiri. If you've gotten one that's been poorly made, then, and that's the only way you've ever experienced it, then I can see that. But how it's up to us, I think.
It is up to us to educate people. Yeah.
Educate people, to show them the light and the life.
And as easy as it is to make a really terrible Negroni, it's equally easy to make a good one, or a great one, or one that's transcendent.
Yeah.
You know?
Or at least
that's
one
what's kind of cool about it.
At least one that's right down the middle every time, you know?
You know, the one other thing that I was going to say about that is that measuring is really vital in the Negroni, because if you're off, these ingredients are all so, you know, aggressive that if you're off a little bit, it can really throw it.
It's nowhere near as bulletproof as a margarita.
Right.
Margarita, basically 3 ingredients as well, but if I get a little more tequila in there than I wanted, it's still going to come out fine. If there's a little more lime juice in there than I wanted,
it's a little tart, still refreshing, right?
Right. More, I call those bulletproof, right?
I agree.
You can twist the dials kind of in every direction.
This one is not that. Like, it's got to be precise.
And then that just makes the pieces of the puzzle shine. You know, I always say, like, gin is floral and you know, herbaceous. Campari is citrusy and you know, got a burnt orange you know, notion to it. Vermouth, especially the Torinos, you use the Coqui Torino in this one, has an inherent sort of cacao flavor happening, right? It's not, there's no cacao in there, but it has notes.
Love that vermouth.
Has notes.
It's wonderful.
So then suddenly you've got this like chocolatey, burnt orange and floral. Like it's like, you know, that orange you get at Christmas time in Europe, and you break it. You know, a lot of things happening in that chocolate orange flavor. And if you get those things out of balance, then it just doesn't quite work.
I agree. Absolutely. So we talked about, like, you know, how easy it is to have a bad Negroni. Do you have a Negroni experience that's maybe the best one of all time? Best one you've ever had?
You know, I don't think I do. That's interesting, because I do drink, obviously, quite a few of them. I think I have some other drinks that I could point to my best experience at. But I think the Negroni is just something that's kind of always been in the background for me. I remember the first real experience of me serving a Negroni is a unique experience. I had just started bartending. This was 23 plus years ago now. Jesus, holy cow, 24 years ago now. And I worked at a restaurant on the Upper East Side of New York City, and this gentleman came in and handed me a bottle that I had never seen in my life, Puntamez, which now I feel is very common. And he brought his own, and instructed me on how to build his Negroni. And I think he brought his own, whether he knew it or not. I think he brought his own vermouth, because he had experiences where the vermouth was the problem.
Wow.
Right, the Campari's going to be all right, the gin's going to be all right,
Yeah.
the vermouth's going to be the problem. He was a regular at this bar, it was a restaurant bar, and we became friends over the years. Charlie was his name. He sat at that bar 2-3 nights a week. But I was the new guy, and he brought me a bottle of Puntamez. and I made him a Negroni. So that's
Amazing.
the biggest memory I have about a Negroni.
Yeah.
And I would also say, at that time in my life, I probably had less than 10 Negronis of my
Wow.
own. So seeing someone care about the drink
Yeah.
and go through extensive lengths to ensure that the drink was going to be delicious, I think in a lot of ways informed my own personal, just overall bartending approach.
Absolutely.
I'm going to now care for every component of every drink because the guest cares, so I need to care as well.
Yeah. We had
Thank you for that. I hadn't thought of that. I had not thought of that in 20 years.
I love that that's the one that you stated, because I had a very similar, truly life-changing experience where a guest actually took the time to walk me through making a drink exactly to his specifications, and it was one that I previously had thought was terrible, and then it changed the way that I looked at it and opened my eyes to, how cocktails can be, the attention to detail in the process and in the technique can make such a big difference.
I think that, and every time I talk to you, I feel like we touch on some philosophical things that enlighten me. You're a great conversationalist, and I always enjoyed talking to you. I think that we just described the thing that we aspire to do that we maybe didn't realize was done to us, right?
Right.
We already both agreed that it's up to us to educate, but first we have to get educated.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, yeah. We had a really fun question come in. What song would you pair with a Negroni?
Oh, I listen to a lot of jazz when I'm at work.
Yeah.
But I listen to a lot of punk rock when I'm not at work. And I've been putting together some interesting playlists for Halloween coming up, so I've been thinking about that. I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic. I think I would play, honestly, a Negroni is a drink that makes me want to sit down and relax to take five, as it were. So
yeah,
maybe Dave Brubeck's
Dave Brubeck's Take Five, man. Classic, traditional.
Totally classic. Puts you in a mindset of both relaxation and enjoyment, and I think that's what this drink can do.
That's great. I love that. Yeah.
What about you? What
Oh man! Well, the fact that you
music
mentioned
would you attach?
the fact that you mentioned punk rock with Negroni is kind of fun, because it's like this
it's a little rebellious,
right? It's got this pinkish red tinge, and it looks kind of harmless, but it's intense. It's
Sure.
It's sort of I don't know. It's kind of deceptive in that way. So man, I feel like I should go some punk rock route. How about the color? Ruby Soho.
Yeah.
Rancid.
Sure.
Yeah.
I love it.
Just don't use rancid vermouth.
Unless that's a brand name that we don't know about. Yeah.
Okay, so you are known primarily, and I know you're very, you have a lot that you've done over your career. You've been a chef. You have been an accomplished chef. But Amor y Amargo, your bar in the East Village, is what you're most known for, and you're an expert in Amaro. Do you have, if you were to recommend to people to have 3 Amari at home, what are your 3 staple Amari?
3. Wow. Normally the question is 5, and I feel like
You can give 5.
I feel like I dialed that in a little bit, but to whittle it down, I can do 5. Well, let me think about it. I mean, I know that at first it seems like a throwaway, and of course we're talking about the Negroni, so that might taint my view here. But I think even when I do 5, this is on my list. You need Campari. You need Campari because it rears its head in so many classic and modern classic cocktails, and it's kind of a building block of the sort of foundation of cocktail making. So I think Campari, pretty necessary. It's right up there with salt and pepper. We kind of got to have some Campari on the back bar. I think. From there, I'd want to have something a little bit more light-bodied and citrusy. So again, Campari, sort of burnt orange and caramel, so citrusy but burnt a little bit, bitter. I would want to have something like Amaro Montenegro,
right?
Which is orange blossom, so a little bit more floral. It's got some cucumber notes on the backside. It's really easy to drink. And then I would want to go the opposite, right? So if we put a spectrum on 3, we're going to have one that's kind of light body, that's Montenegro, one that's kind of in the middle, that's going to be Campari, and then one that goes kind of maybe the further the other direction. And I would say something like, I don't know, it's hard for me to whittle it away down to just a few. So I'm going to pick an obscure one so that no one can go get it. Unicum. I'm a big fan of Unicum.
Wow.
I'm a big fan of Unicum. It comes from the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
And in 1970, the New York Times wrote about Unicum and deemed it the Dark Destroyer. So it is big, bold, bitter forward, very dark, pretty viscous on the palate, like lingering bitterness, quite medicinal. So yeah, I would have one that's citrusy and bright. Got to have Campari, and then something that's like aggressive.
Unicum, if I remember, I haven't heard that brand's name in a long time, but didn't it go through a phase where it actually was bottled under a different brand name?
Yep. So, again, I love that the show is unscripted and we don't have any of this planned in advance because it makes me remember stuff. It made me remember that quote from the New York Times. Not that I was around then. I mean, I was around, but I was less than 1 year old. But Unicum is the only brand, and I know we're definitely specifically talking about alcohol here, but it's the only brand of any kind, shoes, tires, cars, that was ever captured by a communist regime and eventually given back.
Wow.
So Unicum, when the communists took it from the family, the Zwack family, they named the product Zwack, but it's because the patriarch, the grandfather of the family, lied to the communist regime and gave them a false recipe that was close, but not. It was much sweeter, much more watered down. And Zwack gained some popularity during that time, and then when they reclaimed their brand and started making Unicum again, the more bitter version, the more viscous version, there was a bit of a lost market there because there were some people who were like, I like this one.
Right.
So then they just started making both.
It's interesting, yeah. It wasn't that long ago that they switched back to Unicum from Zwack.
Yeah, like 50s.
Right.
So, in the grand scheme of things, not that long ago.
Interesting. That's really good. I'm going to throw a couple Amaro brands at you, and I just want your thoughts. First one, we haven't talked about it all. We didn't talk about it earlier, but it was probably the first Amaro that really, it was my introduction to Amaro that I kind of fell in love with and sort of inspired the Cafe Amaro ultimately when I made that, and that's Averna.
You're throwing at me, what am I supposed to do with it?
Just thoughts.
Oh, sure. Averna, I love it. I find that it has a, though there is none of this in the bottle, oftentimes, like I talked about the vermouth, there's no cacao in that bottle, but we get a little chocolatey notes. Though there's none in the bottle, Averna, for me, strikes a very maple note.
Yeah.
It's got this, like, toasted maple vibe. It's like maple sugar, not maple syrup, right? And it's toasted. It's viscous on the palate. It's got some cola notes to it. I love it. And it's sisters to Campari. It's in the same group.
I love it. I still love Averna. I think it's a great kind of staple, middle of the road go-to Amaro for me.
I think that those kind of words, the brands don't like hearing us say that because they feel like it sort of makes them sound pedestrian. But you know what?
No.
There's nothing wrong with being pedestrian.
No.
Like if I can find your product, that's a good thing.
If somebody were to ask me, like, what are your three kind of, staple must-have Amaro behind your bar at home, that's going to be one of them.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I'm going to throw another brand at you, and I just want your impressions, your thoughts.
Here we go.
This is a brand that I have very, very fond memories, mostly fond, not always fond, memories of my early days of bartending that I consider Amaro, but I don't know if you do or not. Jägermeister.
Oh. I think everybody who knows me knows I'm a huge fan. I do consider it an Amaro. Jägermeister is technically a Krauterlikör, which is the German word for bitter liqueur, which means Amaro, or is the definition of Amaro. It has 56 ingredients. It's been made and owned by the same family for its entire history, which isn't as long as you might think. It's only in the low 90s or high 80 years.
Yeah.
The Mast family, they still own
I
it.
thought it was the 20s, right?
Yeah. It's got ginger and grapefruit and baking spices like cinnamon and anise, and I love it. Honestly, I love it in what I do for a living, stirred bitter drinks. But it is also a secret weapon in a tropical cocktail.
Absolutely. You know what and this was there was an old shot back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Well, I know where you're going.
Called a Surfer on Acid.
That's right.
And I loved that shot back then, and it actually inspired. I did a couple of tropical influenced cocktails that were kind of inspired by that shot.
Sure.
I had on my menu at Manifesto.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? I oftentimes when I go around and do events at other places or I get invited to do them, I try and make sure that I do at least a shake and drink because it gets the crowd excited to see me shake a drink. Because at my bar for 12 years, we've never shaken a drink; it's only stirred. So it's like I get to go from being Gilligan to be the captain for a minute, skipper rather. So, and yeah, oftentimes Jaeger makes an appearance in those kind of drinks for me.
I love it.
I got one called the Rough Seas that uses cachaça and Jägermeister and ginger syrup, and it's a swizzle, so it's long and tall over ice. It's fucking delicious. Yeah, I think Jägermeister, as you said about the Negroni, super polarizing. I think it's because, and I'm going to tie another thing back into it, it's the wrong service. I think that if I'd only ever drank Jägermeister as a frozen shot during college, and I woke up every Sunday morning with a Saturday night hangover from drinking too much Jägermeister, I wouldn't like it. But you can drink it like an adult. You can have it in nice cocktails. You can have it. I always talk about the macaroni and cheese, right? We're adults. We go to a nice restaurant. We pay $30 for some nice macaroni and cheese. But as a kid, I ate that blue box.
Yeah,
you can have macaroni and cheese as an adult.
That's a great analogy.
So I think if you're skeptical, go try Jägermeister again.
If you're
honestly not frozen, have it at room temperature.
Absolutely.
It's delightful.
Yeah, if you're a young bartender who might not be into Jaeger, don't sleep on it. Give it a shot.
1,000%.
Yeah. I'm gonna pour us a little something.
Okay.
And
I'm almost done with my Negroni.
What you think about this? It's not really Amaro, but
I sort of disagree.
Oh, so you would consider this Amaro?
It is it has bittering agents in it. It has a sweetening. So Amaro has no overarching governance or governing body, right? Mm-hmm. And really, what we can kind of whittle it down to is it's pretty much 4 words that describe what Amaro is. And the TTB, who are not known for being lax in this country, are pretty lax about it, which is to say Amaro is bittersweet liqueur. So as long as it's got a bittering agent, a sweetening agent, and alcohol, you can kind of call it an Amaro. What do they call themselves, though?
Herbal liqueur.
Herbal liqueur. So, yeah. I mean, I think that's probably just a lost in translation thing.
It's been a while.
Krauter liqueur means herbal liqueur in German.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just a... So Bekarovka is Czech Republic. Bekarovka, I drink a lot kind of at this time of year, right? We're moving into spooky season.
Yeah.
The weather's going to get a little crisp. It's 80 degrees today, but it's about to happen.
I get a lot of clove, man. I get a lot of clove, cinnamon,
ginger.
Right.
Like this is, I think that when I sit this down in front of someone who's never had it, just neat on its own like this, I get this answer specifically all the time, and it is Christmas cookies.
That is,
right?
That is on point.
On the nose.
Absolutely.
So it's all those aromas of baking spices, and then when you taste it, it's got some like bitterness and some sweetness as well. It's pretty well balanced. But this, I mean, I didn't mean to turn this direction, but like also a secret weapon in tropical drinks.
Absolutely.
All those baking spices come from islands.
How about, it reminds me of falernum.
For sure.
The clove, the ginger, it's very similar to falernum in my mind.
I think that we have this, we Americans and bartenders have this notion that all those things I just listed are, pumpkin spice, winter spices.
Yeah.
But they all come from places where winter doesn't go.
Right.
They all come from islands. That's where we get cinnamon, nutmeg, mace, ginger, cloves, allspice. Yeah. Like they all come from, they're used in savory applications. All those things I just said mixed together with some salt and maybe a little bit of sugar rubbed on chicken, that's jerk.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Add some habaneros or scotch bonnets. But yeah, so I think we think of this as wintertime, but for me, this can again make its appearance in a tropical drink that it's tailor-made.
So since we're talking food, and I think this will probably be my last question to see us out. You've been to Kansas City before. I know we've hung out here. It's been 5 years now, since 2018.
Yeah. Crazy.
But you got a couple days here. Is there one particular food or place that you want to eat while you're in Kansas City?
Sadly, I don't know enough of the names of places, but I know what I'm supposed to have here, and that's Kansas City barbecue, which means it's got a nice rub on it, and it's got a sauce that's not applied during cooking. It's got a sauce that's typically sweeter and applied at the end of the cooking process or even as a dip. Yeah. So while I'm here, and I know that Kansas City barbecue, unlike many barbecues, my mouth's starting to water. He's not fed me lunch, guys. He's made me keep drinking all day. I know that Kansas City barbecue runs the gamut. Yeah. You do sausage and chicken and brisket.
Do you know why?
I don't.
The reason is that
Is it the trains?
Yeah. So because of being in the center of the country, back at the turn of the 20th century, we had for decades the largest livestock exchange in the country, and so everything passed through Kansas City, and so everything got used. It wasn't one thing. It wasn't just pork ribs. It wasn't just beef brisket. It was turkey and chicken and fish, and it was some weird. I mean, you can see like old menus from back then, like beaver and raccoon and like wild stuff. But even if you go to like places like Jack Stack today, you can get smoked lamb ribs that are just, oh my God, they're amazing.
I can't believe, I kind of guessed it as I was saying I didn't know, and then you showed me the train passing by this place, and I was like, it's got to be the trains. That's incredible. So what I want to get while we're here, if you'll facilitate, I want to get some traditional Kansas City rubbed, smoked sauce on the side or whatever.
I would be a
What's your
terrible.
favorite?
I would be a terrible Kansas City host if I did not get you some barbecue, and I always do.
What's your favorite protein?
Burnt ends, man. That's what we
brisket,
do.
beef.
Burnt ends. Yeah,
But
burnt
that's
ends.
beef.
Yep. It's a Kansas City thing. I mean, that's my go-to.
Well, I get it. I
Yeah.
lived many years in. I grew up in the Deep South, but I lived many years in North Carolina. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool, whole hog barbecue smoked situation guy myself with the vinegar sauce. That's my go-to. But I love it all, and I want to do the thing that's done wherever I go.
So we'll get some burnt ends. Last thing before we go. Tomorrow night, you're going to be here back here at the Hey Hey Club. We're
On
gonna
that side of the bar.
Or, well, yes. On that side of the bar, doing Amor y Amargo takeover. We're really excited for that. You were personally named at one point Mixologist of the Year. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and what we might expect, what guests might expect tomorrow night at the takeover?
Sure. I mean, Mixologist of the Year, wow, that was a great honor that was bestowed upon me by Wine Enthusiast magazine. What do they know about Mixologist?
Yeah, right?
It's a wine magazine. Anyways, a lot of other people have...
I got Imbibe.
Yeah, that's a nicer one. No, sponsored by Imbibe's Negroni Week. Drink Campari responsibly. A lot of great people have had that title from that place before me. Lynette Marrero, I'm pretty sure, I want to say Simon Ford was one of them. Like, there was a bunch of people who got that distinction before me. I'm very happy that I got it. That was a couple of years back before the pandemic. I think it's nice to be recognized, to do the work day in and day out, and to have your peers pull you aside and say, hey, we see you. We know you're doing a good job. Thank
Anyone
you.
give you any shit? Like, you don't even shake cocktails? Like, for real?
Yeah, for a little bit. I got that for a little bit. Thanks for pulling that up. Yeah, it was great. And then what can you expect from me tomorrow? I mean, we're going to do a couple of drinks from Amor y Amargo. We're going to do one of the drinks that was in my book that you submitted. I have 10 guest bartenders in my book, and you were one of them. I appreciate that. Called the Pendergast number 2.
Pendergast number 2, using Rieger Kansas City whiskey.
Rieger Kansas City whiskey. And then Ulster drinks, although I did slide in one from my book that's a shake and drink just to have something to break it up, because I understand that, we're not in my bar, we're in your bar, so I want to still appeal. But you're going to come in and get some unique drinks that will be stirred, bitter, complex, challenging, but all delicious. And we'll show you a good time. That's the real goal.
Love it, man. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too.
Yeah, thanks a lot for doing this.
Yeah, man, my pleasure.
Yeah, it was
Cheers,
great. All right, thanks everybody. This has been barely enough, in the words of fellow Missourian Mark Twain. Too much of anything can be bad for you, but too much good whiskey is barely enough.
That's right.
Or too much Morrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, thanks everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.